Well, if isn't the preseason once again, which means the SEC plays the toughest schedules in America every single year. Narrative is starting once again. It's one of the most manufactured narratives in college football, one of the biggest traditions in college football at this point. It's built on charity rankings that don't actually exist. If an SEC fan were watching this right now, they'd say, but we play each other. The bottom is better than the Big Ten's bottom. You've heard it all before. A lot of people used to buy in to that line too, but if you look at the actual preseason FPI numbers and what happened on the field last year, and the whole thing really starts to fall apart really quick, especially when you project things versus some of the FanDuel odds and stuff like that out there. You see, in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly how Missouri, Auburn, and South Carolina keep getting those 20 to 25 range charity bids in the ESPN preseason FPI, how those artificial rankings create a fake gauntlet that props up the top of the SEC, and why it directly hurts the perception of your favorite conference or a team in the conference of the Big Ten headed into 2026. If you're tired of hearing that your conference is soft while the numbers say, that the same thing, but the play on the field says something completely different, this one's for you. Let's get into it. So every single offseason, we see the same pattern. Bad SEC teams like Florida, Auburn, and South Carolina, those are the ones this year, land in the back half of the top 25 range in the preseason FPI. Not because they're projected to be good. I mean, obviously ESPN, I guess, thinks they're going to be good, but because it artificially inflates the strength of schedule for the teams above them. Last year, we saw the same thing. Washington came into the season unranked in preseason FPI. They still finished with more conference wins than teams who are ranked in the preseason FPI this year. Florida, who is at 18, Auburn, who is at 22, and South Carolina, who's at 23. These all are somehow ahead of Washington going into this year. Mind-blowing, I know, right? 3 SEC teams that were ranked in the top 25 all had 2 or less wins in the SEC last year. Yet, the narrative machine just keeps on humming. Then there's Oklahoma sitting at number 12. Number 12, Oklahoma. In the preseason FPI, even though FanDuel has a win total of just 7.5 at this point. Pretty ridiculous. I guess we can penalize Oklahoma for the gauntlet, or we can't penalize Oklahoma for the gauntlet of a schedule that they'll be enduring, I suppose. And we all know how the story usually ends. The difference between playing Mississippi State and Purdue, for the actual elite teams, it barely moves the needle. A real Titan should beat a bad team by roughly the same margin, no matter which conference that bad team comes to. But the FPI keeps treating the SEC bottom feeders like it's some kind of strength multiplier or something like that, when the results on the field keep telling us otherwise. So why does this keep happening? Well, it's not an accident. I wish it was, but it's not an accident. These mid-tier SEC teams get the charity ranking treatment in the preseason rankings because it helps the entire conference outlook to be tougher on paper. And that's right, you guessed it. Who does ESPN, broadcast the games of their conference? I'll let you figure that one out. When Auburn and Missouri sit in the 20s, it boosts the strength of schedule number for Georgia, Texas, Bama, and everyone else in the league. That strength of schedule then feeds into the computer models, the media narratives, and eventually playoff selection conversations. And if you're on Twitter, really, really bad Twitter arguments from a number of people. I'm not going to call anybody out, but a number of people. You probably know who they are. Preseason rankings like this are giving one conference a head start in a race by taking their hurdles and taking them from their line and putting them in the line of the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC, removing their own hurdles to put them in front of the other teams. You see, the top teams look more impressive because of their gauntlet included a couple of teams that were ranked for no other reason than to make the conference look deep. Listen, if you're a Big Ten fan, this matters for all of us. All right, this is a situation where, yes, you may not like the Big Ten, but this does seriously matter for all of us. Sometimes the temptation of Oregon and Ohio State fans is just to say, I don't care about the rest of the conference. And that's fine, I get that. But when the national media keeps repeating that the SEC plays the hardest schedule, it changes how people talk about your team's wins and losses. It changes how they evaluate your conference depth. It changes what kind of bids and seeds and things like that you're you're going to get in the college football playoff rankings. It even leaks into recruiting battles as well. Kids and parents hear the same story year in and year out, wondering if the Big Ten is really the place to play because the SEC's got so much strength of schedule and everything else. That perception gap costs your favorite team in the eye test, in the rankings, and sometimes in the playoff conversation, even when the actual results in the field say otherwise. Last year, we watched Illinois beat Tennessee and Iowa beat Vanderbilt. Oh, but they were bowl games, so apparently those games don't matter. We watched, even though, the Big Ten teams had opt-outs too, we watched Washington hang with Ohio State and Oregon for a good amount of those games. Those aren't supposed to happen if the SEC depth narrative is as real as they claim, but they did happen. You see, ESPN keeps selling us this idea that the SEC plays the hardest schedule in America every single year, but the numbers from last season tell a completely different story. Washington, who's unranked in the preseason FPI this year, finished with more conference wins than 3 top 25 FPI SEC teams combined this year. 3 teams that are supposedly part of the elite Gauntlet had losing records on the field. ESPN isn't just wrong about the Big Ten being soft. They're actively protecting a narrative that the results just, quite frankly, do not support. And until we start calling it out, your favorite Big Ten team is going to keep getting judged by a standard that was never built on actual football being played. Just recruiting rankings, computer numbers that really can't predict at all. Here's what this fake Gauntlet story really hurts the Big Ten as a whole. It creates this self-reinforced loop. The preseason FPI puts a bunch of SEC teams in the top 25, sometimes as many as 12. That's what you have here. You have more than the Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12 even combined. Just pretty incredible, but whatever. Even when several of them finished below 500 last year, before this, that inflates everyone's strength of schedule inside the conference. Then, when those college football playoff teams from the SEC only has one win in the college football playoff against another conference, and that is Tulane, ESPN just acts like it never happened. Oh, they won games in the college football playoffs. Yeah, against Tulane in their own conference. Meanwhile, Big Ten teams that actually beat good competition on the field get dinged because their conference strength ratings look lower on paper, all because ESPN uses recruiting rankings from, that's right, you guessed it, ESPN. It's a closed loop that rewards the narrative instead of the results. The good news is that the middle of the Big Ten is closing that gap fast. Washington returns a primarily defensive team with a top 15 quarterback. Ryan Walters, former Purdue coach, who actually did have a okay defense at times at Purdue, is there. Michigan and USC have strong staffs and top 12 recruiting classes right now. Iowa showed last year that they can hang with the best teams in the conference when they're healthy and they have their guys. When those teams keep winning, and they did last year in several key spots, the Big Ten is only good at the top line really stops working altogether, and you can just kind of point and laugh at the people who try to say it. The data from the end of last season already showed the Big Ten's top 8 teams had a higher average FPI rating than the SEC's top 8. Not because the Big Ten bottom suddenly became elite or anything like that, but because teams 4 through 8, in our conference were matching or beating what the SEC was putting out there in that same range. That's the part of the story ESPN does not want to report on, does not want you to know. You see, there's one specific trick the preseason rankings use every single year that completely manufactures the SEC's reputation and toughness. They drop Missouri, Auburn, and South Carolina, or whatever 3 token SEC teams that year, into the top, the 20 to 25 range. Not because the model loves their rosters or anything like that, but because it artificially boosts the strength of schedule for the teams above them. Now, yes, I'm sure the model does actually have those guys there. I'm not saying that they're fudging the model, but they also work the model in such a way that favors them. That single move makes Georgia's path, Texas's path, and Bama's path look significantly harder on paper than they actually are. That's not a gauntlet. It's a scheduling trick dressed up as a conference depth. And the second we stop pretending it's real, the entire SEC is just better conversation starts to completely shift, because the media is going to have to address it at some point. But if we ever want anything to change, we need to stop entertaining groups like like ESPN who operate the charity ranking system. The top teams in the SEC get the biggest artificial boost. Their schedules look tougher, their computer rankings stay higher longer, and the media has ready-made talking points about the hardest road in America or whatever their new talking point is that week. But the teams actually receiving charity rankings, Auburn, Florida, South Carolina, Missouri, whoever you want to put in there, end up in the weird middle ground where they're ranked high enough to give like quality wins to teams above them, but not good enough to actually compete for anything meaningful. And typically they lose in a bowl game to a Big Ten team that, then they'll have one tight end out and act like, oh, we can't win the game because we didn't have our tight end. Great. Thanks, Vanderbilt. On the Big Ten side, the teams that benefit most from the narrative cracking are the ones who are the rising kind of middle class, you could say, right now. Former top class teams, Washington, Michigan, USC, Iowa, and Penn State. These are the programs that have the roster talent and coaching to take advantage of any perception shift. When the national media or ESPN finally has to admit that the SEC bottom isn't some automatic quality win machine, those Big Ten teams start getting more credit for the wins they already earned. But then you'll also see other Big Ten teams with potential rise up too. If Wisconsin can become what they were, if Nebraska can become what they were back in the day, Illinois, if they can keep being consistent, you're talking about teams like Minnesota, Northwestern even, heck, even Maryland, if they get a decent coach, could start challenging this narrative. But right now, those are the teams who lose in this setup and are the ones that are kind of still buying the old system. If your favorite Big Ten team is sitting there thinking they have to go 10-2 just to have the same respect as an 8-4 SEC team gets, that's the charity ranking system working exactly as designed. I mean, the fact that Minnesota can go 10-2 and they're going to be looked at as less than an 8-4 SEC team is completely terrible and backwards. The fix for all of this is for the whole conference to win on the field, that the numbers become impossible for them to ignore. The same way Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon forced the conversation last year by finishing 1, 2, and 4 in the final FPI. You see, it's time for college football fans to stop buying the SEC Gauntlet myth entirely. I'm not just talking about Big Ten fans. I'm talking about all fans. The numbers from the last few seasons already proved it does not hold up for the entire season. Washington had more conference wins than 3 ranked top 25 FPI teams from the SEC combined right now. Multiple Big Ten teams beat SEC opponents head-to-head when they had guys opting out, and the SEC teams had guys opting out as well. In the middle of the Big Ten is only getting better while teams like Auburn stay in a rut, and Tennessee gets through this identity crisis cycle that they can never really come through from. The Gauntlet isn't real. It's a story. The rankings tell a product, a product to protect. And the sooner Big Ten fans and everyone else stop acting like it's a fact, and Big Ten fans have, but everyone else stops acting like it's a fact, the sooner our teams start getting the credit they've earned on the field for far too long. Unfortunately, the charity rankings and the fake Gauntlet narrative aren't going away on their own. But every time a Big Ten team beats an SEC opponent on the field, every time Washington or Iowa or Michigan proves they belong in the upper tier, the story gets a little harder to sell. Your team doesn't need the media's permission to be elite. They just need everyone to keep winning, and eventually that will give them the what they need to get that perception back, and the numbers will eventually do the talking for them. And let's all hope it does, because if I don't know about you, well, I do know about you. I'm pretty tired of this SEC stuff going on. So thanks for watching the Big Ten Huddle. If this one hit home for you, drop a comment and let me know which Big Ten team you think benefits the most when the narrative finally starts cracking in 2026. Subscribe for more straight talk Big Ten analysis that actually follows the results instead of the rankings. Like, subscribe, 5-star rating on reviews of podcasts, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.